Chosen one, this message has reached you not by chance, but by divine orchestration. There are no accidents in the spirit, only sacred alignments. You were led here because heaven sees you rebuilding what others abandoned. You're not just passing through this moment. You're standing at the doorway of legacy. Something ancient is being restored through you. Something holy is rising from within you. This is more than a message. It's a divine confirmation. You are the legacy your bloodline has been waiting for. From the moment you entered this world, the atmosphere shifted. You didn't just inherit DNA, you inherited a divine mission. Your soul was sent through generations of pain, survival, and silence to become the voice, the light, the restorer. You've questioned why your path was so heavy, why you were burdened with emotional and spiritual weights others ignored. It's because what broke in the bloodline didn't end with them. It was waiting for you. You are the divine seed of change, the curse breaker, the blueprint rewriter, the one who rises, not just for yourself, but for everyone connected to you. Before we step deeper into this message, take a sacred pause. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe, because this isn't just another video. It's a spiritual transmission meant to awaken every chosen one, walking the path of legacy and restoration. If this word is already stirring something deep in your soul, drop 77 in the comments. That number isn't random. It's a divine code, a heavenly signal. It tells the universe you're aligned with your assignment and ready to complete the work your ancestors couldn't. Only those truly called will remain until the end. And if you do, expect deeper insight to unfold. Layers of revelation, streams of spiritual clarity, not just for you, but for the generations connected to your healing. Remember, wisdom reveals itself in layers. Revisit this message as often as needed to align your mind, body, and spirit with the truths being shared. Each time you return, you'll uncover something even more powerful, something divine that may have been hidden before. Let's dive deep into your sacred assignment, broken into 7 divine chapters that will awaken what's been dormant within you. Chapter 1. The invisible burden you've always carried before you had the words to describe it. You could feel it. The heaviness, the sadness, the tension that lived in the air, even when no one said a word. It was like carrying a weight you never agreed to lift. A burden that was passed to you silently, through glances, through silence, through inherited wounds. No one told you what it was. No one warned you about it. But your spirit recognized it. Even as a child, you knew something was off. You could sense that your family carried pain that ran deeper than surface struggles. You could feel it in your bones when you walked into a room full of unspoken stories. What you were carrying wasn't just yours. It was ancestral. It was generational. It was spiritual. You weren't just born into a family. You were sent into a bloodline full of warriors, survivors, the broken, the silenced, the ashamed. People who endured more than they ever admitted. People who passed on traditions without ever questioning the cost. People who loved the best they could, but never learned to heal. You felt the effects in your mind, your emotions, even your body. The chronic exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. The unexplained anxiety. The pressure to be everything for everyone. The guilt for wanting to walk away. The fear of becoming what you're trying to break. This burden, this invisible weight, found you not because you were weak, but because you were the first strong enough to carry it into transformation. Heaven chose you because heaven knew what was buried in your DNA, unshakable resilience. spiritual intelligence, the courage to confront what others denied, the sensitivity to feel what others numbed, and the sacred anger that rises when you see the cycle trying to repeat itself again. You were never just the fixer. You are the healer. You are the one who shows up in the middle of generational chaos with clarity in your voice and compassion in your heart. You question everything, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence for truth. You look at the dysfunction and say, "No more." You see the addiction and declare, "It ends with me." You recognize the pain and choose to feel it instead of running. You hear the silence and decide to speak, even when no one understands, even when you're met with resistance, even when the very ones you're trying to save push you away. Because restoration isn't glamorous, it's lonely, it's painful, it's holy. You carry burdens that others never had the strength to acknowledge, but you also carry the blessing that others never dared to dream of. You were chosen to break cycles, but more than that, you were chosen to build something new, a new standard, a new legacy, a new frequency of love, truth, and alignment. This isn't just about healing the past. This is about rewriting the future. And while the weight may feel invisible to the world, heaven sees every moment you choose, healing over hiding. Every time you stop yourself from repeating an old reaction. Every tear you cry in private, just trying to hold it together. You are not just breaking chains. You are unlocking gates. Gates to freedom. Gates to peace. Gates to generational blessings that couldn't flow until you showed up. So no, the burden didn't start with you, but by the grace of God, it will end with you. Chapter 2. You were born different for a reason. You've always known you weren't like the others. Not better, just different. Different in how you think. Different in what you feel. Different in what you question and what you refuse to accept. From a young age, you were aware, not just of the world around you, but of the world within you. While others ignored the tension, you felt it. While others laughed through the pain, you sat with it. While others followed the rules without question, you always asked, why? You weren't trying to be difficult. You were trying to be real. Your spirit was already tuned into higher truth. Even if you didn't understand it at the time, your soul was never here to conform. It was sent to transform. You were the one who felt the energy shift in the room before anyone said a word. The one who cried without knowing why, then later realized it was someone else's pain you were carrying. You knew when people were hiding something. You sensed when love wasn't real. You picked up on the things no one was willing to talk about. And because of that, you were called too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too intense. But what they didn't know is that your sensitivity was sacred. Your emotional depth wasn't weakness. It was a spiritual gift. The world tried to label you. Your family tried to silence you. But heaven set you apart. You were born different because your purpose could not be fulfilled by someone ordinary. You had to feel more, so you could heal more. You had to question more, so you could correct what was broken. You had to stand out, so you could eventually lead others out of darkness. And that's why you never fit in, because you weren't made to fit. You were made to rebuild. They called you the black sheep, but spiritually, you are the golden thread, the divine spark that was hidden in the family line, waiting to awaken and shift the atmosphere. You see, the enemy always tries to silence the ones with divine assignments. That's why your battles started early. That's why you were misunderstood, rejected, overlooked, because your light threatened everything that wanted to keep your bloodline bound in shadows. But no matter what they said, no matter what you lost, no matter how far you drifted, the call on your life never left you. Because you weren't just born into your family, you were sent into your family. To be the intercessor, the revealer, the repairer of the breach. You were sent to confront the lies that shaped generations, to reject the silence that let abuse continue, to stop the self-sabotage, the self-hatred, the fear that passed down like tradition. You are not here to repeat history. You are here to redeem it. You are not here to suppress your light. You are here to ignite others. That ache you feel when things don't align. That's purpose. That fire in your belly when you hear truth. That's your assignment, remembering itself. That loneliness you sometimes carry. That's the mark of being chosen. You weren't made to walk a path that already existed. You were made to create one. So if you've ever wondered why you're different, why you feel so much, why you can't go along just to get along, remember this: you were born different because your family line prayed for a shift, and God sent you as the answer. Chapter 3: Confronting the Wounds That Run Deep. Being chosen to restore the bloodline is not a title, it's a sacred calling. And with that calling comes a journey that is not for the faint of heart. You are the one heaven chose to go into the dark places, to confront what others ignored, to speak what others buried, to feel what others numbed, and to break what others learned to tolerate. This isn't about fixing broken people. This is about breaking spiritual chains. You've been sent to walk into a family line full of silent suffering and say, "No more. It ends here." But before you could become the healer, you had to face the wounds yourself. Wounds you didn't create, but still felt. Wounds that were passed down through generations like heirlooms. Bitterness, neglect, abandonment, addiction, shame. You felt the emotional residue of betrayals that happened before you were even born. You absorbed patterns that were never spoken out loud, but lived in every gesture, every expectation, every strained interaction. And for a long time, you didn't understand why you felt so heavy, why certain relationships drained you, why you wrestled with emotions that didn't even seem like they belonged to you. But the truth is, they didn't. You were carrying the echo of pain that was never processed. You were feeling the heartbreak of generations who were never allowed to cry. You were standing at the intersection of past and future, holding a sword of truth, with a heart big enough to feel it all and strong enough to finally release it. This kind of healing is not surface level. It is soul level. It is spirit-led. It is raw, real, and relentless. It looks like crying when no one understands why. It looks like setting boundaries that upset people used to access. It looks like choosing solitude so you can hear God more clearly. It looks like honoring the version of yourself that kept showing up, even while broken. Confronting these wounds will cost you. You may lose closeness with those who are still committed to their illusions. You may lose the approval of family members who don't understand your choices. You may be judged, mocked, misunderstood, even labeled the problem for trying to fix what everyone else was content to ignore. But understand this: the most dangerous spirits aren't loud. They're subtle, they're generational. They hide behind religion, behind pride, behind silence. They show up as codependency disguised as loyalty, as shame disguised as humility, as control disguised as love. You were sent to expose those spirits, to shine light in the hidden places, to speak words that shatter spiritual paralysis, to disrupt cycles that have stolen destinies for too long. And that's why you've been through so much. Your trials weren't punishments. They were your preparation. Your emotional battles weren't random. They were training grounds to sharpen your gifts and strengthen your resolve. You had to feel the pain in order to recognize it in others. You had to walk through the fire in order to pull others from the flames. You're not just healing for yourself, you're healing for your mother, who never got to rest, for your father, who never had the tools, for your ancestors, who had to survive instead of thrive, for your future lineage that deserves to know peace instead of patterns. You are the curse breaker, the lineage liberator, the walking prayer of those who never got to see the promise. Yes, the wounds run deep, but the healing you carry goes deeper. Chapter 4. Spiritual Gifts Awakened Through Battle. The enemy knew you were different from the moment you arrived. That's why the warfare started early. That's why the rejection hit hard. That's why the confusion, the delay, the constant inner conflict followed you like shadows. But what the enemy didn't anticipate was that every battle would birth something sacred within you. You've always had an inner knowing. Even before you had language for it, you could feel the truth behind people's masks. You could walk into a room and instantly sense the atmosphere shift. You could hear what wasn't being said. You could feel pain that wasn't your own. You knew things without needing proof. That wasn't imagination. That was divine sensitivity. You thought your overthinking was a flaw, but it was discernment sharpening itself. You thought your emotional depth was a weakness, but it was the foundation of your prophetic gift. You thought your solitude was punishment, but it was the classroom of the Spirit. You don't just pray, you intercede. You don't just see, you perceive. You don't just hear, you decode. Your dreams are messages. Your instincts are warnings. Your stillness is strategy. The battles you faced, those long, lonely, confusing battles, they weren't delays, they were activations. Spiritual gifts don't awaken through comfort. They awaken through crisis. They sharpen through heartbreak, betrayal, isolation, and warfare. Because your gifts aren't for show, they're for warfare. They're for healing. They're for purpose. God doesn't give you sight just to see. He gives you vision to lead. You were sent into a spiritually dry bloodline with a well of living water. You were born into confusion, but gifted with divine clarity. You were surrounded by silence, but gifted with a voice that breaks chains. That's why your sensitivity is your superpower. That's why your intuition is your compass. That's why your discernment is your protection. You were designed this way on purpose. You've always been tuned into something deeper, and the more you embrace your spiritual identity, the more heaven expands your capacity. But with that expansion comes responsibility. That's why some people had to be removed. That's why some environments had to fall apart. Not because you weren't worthy, but because your gifts needed space to breathe. Chosen ones are often misunderstood because their abilities don't fit into the natural world. They're supernatural. They carry weight in unseen realms. They disrupt spiritual atmospheres. They hear what others miss. They love with divine compassion and correct with heavenly boldness. And so you were hidden, set apart, not forgotten, but preserved. Because your gifts are not just for you. They are for every soul you're assigned to heal. Every generational curse you're assigned to break. Every spiritual system you're called to restore. So no, don't dim your light. Don't downplay your gifts. Don't second-guess the visions you receive. You were anointed for this. You were prepared for this. You were born for this. Now rise in full awareness of who you are. Not just a survivor, not just a sensitive soul, but a spiritual warrior, armed with heaven's authority and entrusted with generational keys. You are the answer, the awakening, the divine interruption. Chapter 5. The rejection that built you. They didn't just leave you out. They left you wondering if you were ever meant to belong. They didn't just laugh at your dreams. They tried to kill the seed before it could take root. They didn't just call you too much. They rejected the very parts of you that heaven handpicked for your purpose. They called you too quiet when you were being observant, too emotional when you were feeling truth, too deep when you were tapping into spirit, and too distant when you were learning how to hear the voice of God above all the noise. Their rejection wasn't just painful, it was holy. It was surgical. It cut away everything that would have contaminated your calling. It removed the need for their applause, their validation, and their shallow approval. It made room for a higher anointing that couldn't be contained by small-minded rooms. See, chosen ones are rarely accepted in the places they come from. Just like Jesus, who wasn't honored in his own hometown, you were never meant to be celebrated in the environment that watched you grow up with spiritual eyes they couldn't understand. That rejection was spiritual. It wasn't about you. It was about what you carried. Your presence reminded them of what they suppressed. Your light disturbed the darkness they had made peace with. Your truth shook the lies they had learned to live in. But here's what they didn't see. God was using every no, every betrayal, every exile to protect the oil on your life, to take you through a process that would strip away the counterfeit and prepare you for the authentic. Like Joseph, your pain was permitted because your elevation required it. He was thrown into a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned, forgotten by men, but never forgotten by God. And when the time was right, God called him from the shadows and sat him in a position where nations would depend on him, including the very people who once betrayed him. Your story is not a tragedy, it's a divine setup. Everything they did to try to break you, God used to make you. Every door they slammed in your face became the hallway God walked you through to prepare you for rooms they could never enter. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't need to chase them down and make them see who you are now. Your purpose will speak for itself. Your fruit will be undeniable, and your elevation will be God's response to every rejection. Forgive them, not for them, but for you, because you cannot step into a divine destiny while holding on to earthly wounds. You are no longer the one who needed their acceptance. You've outgrown their limitations. You've been refined by fire, purified by pain, and positioned by grace. The stone they rejected has become the cornerstone. You were never just a misfit. You were a masterpiece in disguise. You were never abandoned. You were set apart. You are not their curse. You are the cure. You are not the wound. You are the healing balm sent to break the cycle. And when it's all said and done, your story will prove one thing. God builds his greatest vessels out of rejection. Chapter 6. You're the answer to ancestral prayers. Long before you arrived, there were voices crying out for deliverance, not just in church pews or quiet rooms, but in cotton fields, in kitchens, in corners, in prisons, in places where hope was barely hanging on. There were grandmothers who rocked back and forth in the midnight hour, whispering prayers over family lines they didn't have the strength to change. There were fathers who worked until their hands bled, praying silently with their heads down, asking God to send someone, anyone, who would break the cycle of poverty, addiction, or silence. There were women who endured abuse behind closed doors but held their heads high in public, carrying pain in their bones and prayers in their breath. There were men who never learned how to speak love, but they cried in silence when no one was watching, asking heaven to do for their descendants what they could not. Their words became wind, their tears became offerings, their pain became prophetic seeds. And you, chosen one, you are the harvest. You didn't just show up, you were summoned. You are a divine response. You are the echo of their hope, the embodiment of a spiritual longing too deep for words. You are the yes to 1,000 whispered, "Please, God." This is why the weight on your shoulders feels different, why your eyes see things others can't, why your heart feels what others try to ignore, why your journey is filled with trials and triumphs that can't be explained logically. It's because your life is not just about you. You were born with generations inside of you. You're carrying their unfinished stories. You're walking with their wisdom embedded in your soul. They may not have had language for spiritual gifts, but you inherited them. They may not have had space to cry, but their tears flow through your empathy. They may not have known how to break the chains, but you were sent with the key. You are the voice that speaks where they were silenced. You are the warrior who fights what they were too tired to face. You are the healer who touches wounds that were never acknowledged. You are the new blood, the divine interruption, the generational shift, and heaven knows exactly who you are. You were anointed for this, equipped for this, empowered for this. So don't shrink. Don't second-guess your path. Don't silence your gifts to make others comfortable. Don't give up when the weight feels too heavy, because the oil on your life is too costly to be wasted on doubt. You are their answered prayer. You are their spiritual reparation. You are the manifestation of freedom. You are the miracle. And every step you take in obedience is breaking a curse, healing a wound, restoring balance, and honoring the names of those who never saw freedom but believed it was possible. Let your life be a song they never got to sing. Let your success be a harvest from seeds they planted with tears. Let your peace be the answer to their pain. You, chosen one, are not just a name in the family line. You are the line's divine rewrite. You are the one heaven sent when earth cried out. And the angels rejoice, not just because you were born, but because you remembered who you are. Chapter 7. Restoration is your legacy. This journey you're on, it's not just about breaking generational curses. It's about building generational blessings. It's about crafting a new story from the ruins of what once was. You're not just the wrecking ball to dysfunction. You are the master builder of restoration. You're not just tearing down strongholds. You're laying down sacred stones for a foundation that will outlive you. This is legacy work. This is eternal impact. This is divine architecture. You, chosen one, were never just sent to survive. You were called to transform, to heal what others refuse to speak of, to shine light in places generations learned to keep dark, to speak life where silence once reigned, to bless where bitterness once ruled, to love boldly where fear had built a fortress. You are not just a breaker of cycles. You are a planter of gardens. You are sowing seeds of wholeness, peace, truth, and light into a bloodline that's longed for relief. You are proof that God doesn't just cut off what's toxic. He resurrects what's holy. You are rewriting the emotional code of your family. No longer will numbness be mistaken for strength. No longer will silence be passed off as dignity. No longer will suppression be a survival tactic. You're building a new legacy where emotions are sacred, not shameful. Where conversations flow instead of curses. Where love is not just felt, but spoken. Where healing is a lifestyle, not just a last resort. You're teaching your children, your siblings, your community, that it's okay to feel, to cry, to forgive, to grow. That pain doesn't have to be inherited. It can be transmuted. That trauma doesn't have to echo through time. It can stop with you. And you didn't get here easily. You had to fight battles in the spirit realm that no one else could see. You had to fast, pray, weep, and wrestle your way through spiritual storms that tried to take your mind, your body, your soul. But you stood firm. And now you're walking in power, not just for yourself, but for those who come after you. You're not just a chain breaker. You're a chain replacer. What once bound your family is being replaced with divine inheritance. The lie is being replaced with truth. The shame is being replaced with honor. The trauma is being replaced with testimony. Because of your obedience. Because you said yes to the call when everything in you wanted to quit. Because you dared to heal when it was easier to numb. Because you chose faith when fear was louder. The bloodline is rising. Something sacred is happening in the unseen. Ancient chains are snapping in the spirit realm. The residue of generations of pain is being washed away by divine grace. You are standing in the gap as a holy bridge between what was and what will be. The cycles of addiction ending. The patterns of emotional neglect being rewritten. The fear of speaking truth crushed beneath your courage. The generational silence that hid abuse, hid depression, hid guilt. It's breaking open under the sound of your voice. And in its place, God is building something breathtaking. A legacy of love. A lineage of liberty. A history of healing. A family tree rooted in faith and flourishing in favor. You're not just rewriting your story. You are rededicating an entire lineage to divine purpose. You're not just creating new habits. You're reintroducing heaven to your household. This is sacred work. This is priestly work. This is kingdom building from the inside out. You are the new blueprint, a living map of what it looks like when God rewrites DNA with destiny. You are what it looks like when mercy visits a bloodline and says, it ends here, and something greater begins now. So walk boldly, chosen one. Your legacy is not in the things you accumulate. It's in the hearts you free. It's in the truth you speak. It's in the wholeness you embody. It's in the joy that returns to your family's name. You are the restorer of ancient ruins, the repairer of broken walls, the rebuilder of desolate generations. Restoration is not just your assignment, it's your inheritance. And now, it will be your legacy. Chosen one. You were never simply born by chance. You were sent, dispatched from realms unseen, an answer to a cry your ancestors whispered in their suffering. You carry the fingerprints of the divine. Your arrival was not a coincidence. It was a strategic placement in the timeline of your family's healing. You were never just part of the family by default. You were assigned, marked and set apart before your first breath to break generational curses, to see through the illusions, and to walk a path that many ran from. Where others conformed, you questioned. Where others gave in, you stood firm. You are the spiritual reboot of a weary bloodline, and you were never just broken. You were rebuilt, with stronger faith, deeper insight, and a heart that knows pain, but still chooses love. Every wound became a window for divine wisdom. Every scar, a seal of sacred resilience. You are not just a survivor. You are the restorer, the one who rebuilds what others thought was lost forever. You are the one who takes the shattered pieces and creates something holy. You are the one who rewrites the toxic patterns, transforming dysfunction into clarity, fear into strength, and silence into truth. When you walk into a room, the atmosphere shifts because you don't just carry energy, you are energy. You don't just influence people, you awaken them. And it's not just for now, it's for the generations who come after you. Your healing speaks for the unborn. Your obedience echoes into eternity. So take your place. Step boldly into your divine identity. Wear your crown, not just as a symbol of royalty, but as a reminder of responsibility. Honor your assignment, because it was tailor-made for your soul. It won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. And above all, never forget, you weren't chosen just to shine. You were chosen to restore the bloodline.